Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party have long been opposed to high levels of immigration to Australia, with the party having voiced support for establishing a zero-net migration policy, similar to the one we saw during the pandemic, permitting only highly skilled migrants from culturally cohesive countries to settle in Australia. Unsurprisingly, the mainstream often label this as xenophobic or even racist, which I think is just lazy journalism, but a typical reaction from the powers that be who support high immigration levels. However, in recent times, it seems to be that it's not just people from the political right that are in favour of reducing immigration. For example, the ABC published an article indicating that record immigration is probably starting to hurt. The uncomfortable truth about record high immigration levels, rents and inflation, where they asked the question, wouldn't it make more sense to simply scale back the level of immigration, even temporarily, to take the pressure off rents and help lower inflation? Yeah, it would make sense. They also make the astute observation that all those people arriving need somewhere to live and the increased demand is driving rents higher. Really? Immigrants need places to live and that's putting pressure on housing? Obviously. Unless we're building enough houses and infrastructure, which we're not, high immigration is hurting us. Bob Carr, former Labor Premier of New South Wales, has also recently spoke out against Australia's high immigration levels, noting Mr Carr was once calling for unvaccinated Australians to be denied free healthcare due to their willful stupidity. If we followed that logic to its natural conclusion, then everyone must be tested for every incident/accident they're involved in order to determine whether it's occurred or was incurred due to their willful stupidity or not, and then decide whether to deny them or charge them for their medical attention. For example, drinking, smoking, speeding, overeating, playing dangerous sports, etc. Sorry, where was I? Oh yes, immigration. So Bob Carr called out Australia's immigration policy recently. We don't need it. Bob Carr slams Australia's record immigration intake. This isn't the first time he's called it out. Back in 2018, Australia's immigration rate should be cut in half, Bob Carr says. He basically stated that the country's experiment of running the fastest rate of immigration in the world was an experiment that was failing. In his most recent interview, he said, I've been trying to get Australia to understand that we do not need to have the highest rate of immigration in proportion to our population in the world. I just wonder why this is the only economic model we've got, to force-feed population growth, to run the highest imaginable immigration intake, and to condemn our big cities to a relentless chase to keep up in terms of infrastructure. We don't have to do it to guarantee Australia's prosperity. It's a lazy way of running an economy. Governments can't keep up amid the housing crisis. Canberra makes no contribution to the states in response to the pressure that it is putting the states under. Australia brought in a record 737,000 people in 2022-23 financial year, up 73%. Adjusting for migrant departures, that's still a record net annual gain of 518,000 people, almost the population of Tasmania. The barefoot investor, Scott Pape, has recently been speaking out against Australia's immigration policy as well. I don't know his political persuasion, but I think he probably intentionally stays politically neutral, at least in public, a smart choice, as his customers are from all walks of life. It would be stupid to alienate half your customer base like we saw with Woolworths and others during the divisive Voice referendum campaign. With regards to immigration, Mr Pape said it's time to ask some hard questions. $2,000 a day? Barefoot investor Scott Pape hits out at broken Australia. In terms of the housing crisis, he said, yes, there's more to solving the property crisis than immigration. There's the tax breaks that favour investors, a genuine lack of supply, and more social housing that needs to be built. Yet the fact remains that, as it stands, overseas arrivals are outpacing the construction of new homes at a rate of almost 4 to 1. Why are we currently bringing in 2,000 new migrants a day, 660,000 in the last year, when the rental market is in crisis? Our politicians like to crow about how we're the lucky country. that hasn't had a recession for a record-breaking 34 years, yet we're largely achieved it by bringing more people into our paddock. I'm not anti-immigration or xenophobic, I just don't agree with the country's current unrelenting, unconstrained goal of economic growth. Daniel Wild, Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, a conservative think tank, said in an interview, "What is clear is that the government is not in control of its migration program, and this is causing immense economic and humanitarian damage to our nation. We've had 4 consecutive quarters of negative per capita economic growth. Migration makes the economic pie bigger, but the slice of that everybody in the country is getting is now smaller. The government's policy is fundamentally out of step with the expectations of the community." President Jenny Goldie of the ecological advocacy group Sustainable Population Australia, clearly on the left side of politics, also commented on this mass migration program. Growth of just under 2/3 people in 1 year on this largely arid continent with a variable climate and poor soils is unconscionable. It is unsustainable in economic, social and environmental terms. Indeed, it is nothing short of criminal. It is the main cause of the all-time rental crisis and the cruel increase in homelessness. But Mr. Albanese simply doesn't care. He knows he has no voter consent for what he's doing. Economist Leith Van Onselen, co-founder of Macro Business, stated in an interview, "Population numbers are out of control and it's coming at the same time as housing construction is collapsing. We only added 1 home per 4.5 new residents. That there, ladies and gentlemen, is why we've got a rental crisis." Our dear leader, Anthony Albanese, did admit that something needs to be done. He stated, "We do need to have our migration levels brought to a sustainable level. People are coming here, enrolling in courses that don't really add substantially to either their skills base or to the national interest here." Consequently, Minister for Home Affairs, the Honourable Claire O'Neill, recently declared that the Albanese government continues to deliver on migration strategy. Do you trust them? They said they'll be introducing a new genuine student test to crack down on international students looking to come here primarily to work. They'll be increasing the imposition of no further stay conditions on visitor visas. And they said they will be increasing the English language requirements for student visas. What? Demanding that students who come to Australia can understand English? Isn't that, how would you say, xenophobic or racist? I don't know, I'm just asking.